Hey guys, we're going to do check your understanding too. So this was lesson 2. What will be the mascot? And in class we went over these. So if you missed class, make sure you get your notes from me or another student. And probably the biggest thing we came out of this lesson was we learned about a mosaic plot, which allowed us to see that since we asked 5 times as many students as teachers, the width of the student segmented bar graph was 5 times wider. And this allowed our eyes to kind of take into account that additional information. All right. So now we kind of understand that. To check our understanding, how can we use data given to us instead of collected? So as we look here, we see again, the individual being asked is, the following table gives the results of a random sample of upper level students at Rocky Vista University, the Fighting Prairie Dogs. Okay, so those are our individuals, along with a mosaic plot. So there must be 2 variables. One of the variables was grade level, and another variable was employment status. So again, back on our learning goals, we're doing this to decide if there's an association between the 2. So if I knew you were a senior, are you more or less likely to have a specific employment status? Or if I knew you were a junior, what is your employment status? If this data, I already know from looking at this mosaic plot that there is an association because the 2 graphs are not exactly the same. That would look like this. This would be what the graph with the mosaic plot would look like if there was no association. So there obviously is an association. One quick way of saying this would be, I can see just here on the senior that this is quite a bit smaller. So if I know you're a senior, you're much less likely to never have had a job because that's what the orange stands for. Now I could have pointed out other things, like notice this is much taller on the seniors. So if I know you're a senior, you're more likely to currently be working as well. So that's why when we look at part C, we want to say that there is an association between the grade level, the one variable, and the other variable, job experience. And we can say why. What does this mean to us? Well, knowing the grade level helps us, predict the other variable. What is the other variable? The job experience. For example, as I said a minute ago, a senior versus a junior is more likely to be currently working, orange, or excuse me, blue. The senior is more likely to be currently working. Okay, so besides figuring out if there is an association, we can also, our other learning goals are can we calculate some marginal or joint proportions from this? So let's take a look. The first one's asking us just about the juniors, and this one's asking us just about the seniors. All right, so we first need to tally up how many we have of each, right? Our subtotals. So it looks like we've talked to a total of 131. And those are our subtotals. So it says calculate the proportion of juniors that are either currently working, right? not working, but have a job, or never had a job, okay? So currently working would be 14 out of the 51. Not working, but had a job would be 22 out of 51. And never had a job would be 15 out of 51. These are what we would call the proportions of the juniors. So when they say the word of the juniors, we notice that this has to be the denominator, okay? In the same way, we're going to do the same thing for the seniors. So we want to make sure that the denominator here is the seniors. So currently working, we have 30 out of 80. And we can show the proportion as a fraction or a decimal. Not working, but had a job, 40 out of 80. And never had a job. So hopefully from this activity, you were able to do this either with your student group or kind of at home once you think through this and use your notes. And this should be used just to double check your answers. So now, pulling the lesson together, you may have taken some notes here, and I'm going to give you some additional notes to think about. So at this point in our lesson, we've focused on what we call 2 learning targets. Learning target 1 and learning target 2 touch on displays, right? You see our topic here, right? Displays. How do we display categorical data? Right? We learned we can do that with a bar graph in our last lesson in this one, a segmented bar graph, and the brand new one from today is a mosaic plot. Now, if we want to use our textbook to figure out what these are, we can, but it's also nice to actually put something in our notes that we can refer back to. It's quicker than looking in a textbook. So a bar graph is something very specific. It means that each bar represents a certain frequency or count. Frequency, also known as count, or a relative frequency, also known as a percentage, right, for each category. So we saw that today that we could completely make a bar graph even if the data given to us was just percentages. Those are called relative frequencies, okay? So bar graphs can be made with percentages or raw numbers, and we were able to turn these into raw number bar charts as well, or bar graphs. Those names are interchangeable. Now, a segmented bar graph is when we stack up the bars. And when we stack them up, they make 100%. Keeping in track of, okay, this was all of the teachers we talked to. And so we see here that, in a way, a mosaic plot is a segmented bar graph that has an additional feature to it. Notice that each of these are stacked up, and they go up to 100%. So why do we need an extra name for a mosaic plot? Well, it actually has a different width to it, right? It is a segmented bar graph where the width of the bars is proportional to the group size. So in our example today, the students' group size was 5 times larger, so we made the width of the segmented bar graph 5 times wider. Now, what other learning goal are we working on? Well, notice in our check for understanding, we're still working on understanding the reason. Why did we ask this question? Well, we asked it to figure out if there's an association between two variables. Whether it's your role at school, right? This is your role at school and what you voted on a mascot, or if it was an association between your grade level and your employment status, right? So an association means that we're looking to find whether or not, if knowing the value of one variable helps us to predict the value of the other variable. The quickest way we were able to do that is ask ourselves, are the segmented bar graphs different? If so, then we have to say yes, there is an association. Thanks for joining us, guys.